But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
What's up, party people, and welcome to HBR News number 177. Using Me Too as a means to remove SCOTUS judges you don't like. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I am here with my woman-murdering alt-right gateway drug dealers to look at the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Clam Slam Badger style. Let's get started, shall we? Today's panel consists of the usual suspects. Mike, hashtag I stand with Mark J. Bird J. You'll get that joke a little later. Hannah, Bert, and Ernie are Muppets, you sick bastards, Wallen. Doctor dancing on top of the counter whilst demanding Szechuan sauce is the domain of real men, Randermacam. And me...
I've never murdered a woman successfully.
And me, the Doge in charge, who is barely awake after the Captain Marvel trailer. We have a great show lined up for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comments section. On this week's HBR News Show, we're going to be talking about the events of the week, like sexual allegations against Supreme Court candidate Brett Kavanaugh, which I know was the topic everyone was discussing over the weekend and last week. Norm Macdonald cucks, or does he, drama. UK Parliament member Lucy Powell's desire to ban private social media groups because fuck those people, especially if they're men, and more. So stay with us because it's going to be a fun show. And also stick around afterwards for the patron-only after show. So The Verge made a video tutorial of sorts describing building a gaming PC that has received some criticisms, and there were people who know a lot more about computers than I do that were pointing out factual errors in relation to the video. The response? They pulled it down, and it must be racism. Anyway, if you'd like to participate in our after shows, either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. And also, be sure to feed the Badger. I think that we're still doing the appeal fundraiser, so it's not too late to do so. Go to feedthebadger.com if you want to help us appeal the lawsuit with the Mary Sue and the Calgary Expo. We definitely have a case, but, well, I don't want to talk too much about it because I know it makes Alison nervous, but just go take a look. I think there's something there, is all I'm going to say. So, now, with that all out of the way, we're going to get into the stories, because we have a few, and they're going to create some discussion. So, Kavanaugh accusations. An anonymous woman has come forward with a complaint of sexual misconduct against President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Brett Kavanaugh. The alleged assault happened over 30 years ago, when the judge and the woman were both in high school. The accuser first approached Democratic lawmakers in July, shortly after Trump nominated Kavanaugh. From the New Yorker, quote, in the letter, the woman alleged that, during an encounter at a party, Kavanaugh held her down, and that he attempted to force himself on her. She claimed in the letter that Kavanaugh and a classmate of his, both of whom had been drinking, turned up music that was playing in the room to conceal the sound of her protests, and that Kavanaugh covered her mouth with his hand. She was able to free herself, somehow. Although the alleged incident took place decades ago, and the three individuals involved were minors, the woman said that the memory had been a source of ongoing distress for her, and that she had sought psychological treatment as a result. In a statement, Kavanaugh said, quote, I categorically and unequivocally deny this allegation. I did not do this back in high school or at any time. The accuser had contacted her congresswoman, Anna Eshoo, a Democrat, not that that's important, sending her a letter describing her allegation. The letter was also sent to the office of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Feinstein was prepared to lead Democratic questioning of Kavanaugh during his confirmation hearing weeks later. The woman contacted Feinstein's office directly, according to multiple sources, as cited by The New Yorker. On Thursday, Feinstein announced that she had referred the matter to the FBI. Quote, I have received information from an individual concerning the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, Feinstein said. That individual strongly requested confidentiality, declined to come forward or press the matter further, and I have honored that decision. I have, however, referred the matter to federal investigative authorities, end quote. Feinstein decided to handle the matter in her own office without notifying other members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Some of her Democratic colleagues have said it was to protect the privacy of the accuser. Others showed concern. Quote, we couldn't understand what their rationale is for not briefing members on this. This is all very weird, one of the congressional sources said. Another source added, she's had the letter since late July, and we all just found out about it. Kavanaugh's old classmate, named in the letter and quoted in The New Yorker, is Mark Judge, according to the Weekly Standard. Judge spoke to news organizations Friday afternoon, denying that any such incident ever occurred. It's just absolutely nuts. I never saw Brett act that way. At that time, Judge, this is Mark Judge, did not know who made the allegations. Over the weekend, Christine Blasey Ford has publicly come forward putting a face to the accusations, telling the Washington Post, quote, civic responsibility is outweighing my anguish and terror about retaliation, end quote. Ford is a college professor and a registered Democrat who has given small monetary donations to political causes, according to the Washington Post, as cited by Fox News. Well, we will see how the story unfolds. So, does anyone have any thoughts on this crazy story of an allegation that has come out of nowhere from 30 years ago?
TFW, you feel jealous of incels. MFW, you feel jealous of incels, or whatever it is. I know I'm a MGTOW now, so I've gone the right way, but there's still more than one woman in my past that could well, and there's several people who could lie, but yeah, for any man who's actually got his end away on a series of women, any of whose name he's forgot, like if I was a promiscuous man, I'd be very fucking nervous right now. So I'm glad I'm not.
Only worry about it if you're
the
gonna
guy that never gets laid. Have turned out nice for me in the end.
Apparently, you only have to worry about it if you go into the entertainment industry or politics. That's a bit weird. Like you didn't mind a rapist walking around for 30 years, but once he's on the SCOTUS, you think, I better report it. I mean, sure, it's being reported if it's just being sort of like brought up. It's not even like she didn't go to the cops. She just brought it up with the press. She went to the press. So
oh yeah, but she was so upset about this that, you know, she went into therapy and didn't tell the cops and didn't do anything about it throughout his entire career in the legal and judicial profession. Just, you know, went to therapy because obviously you wouldn't want to prevent this from happening to anybody else. You just want to complain about it to somebody. You know, there's a lot about this that is consistent with other false accusers. The main thing is that she cited details that are either unlikely or impossible. She claimed a witness, you know, it existed, and then the witness said, well, I never saw anything like that. That's what she's describing didn't happen. That's a big one right there. But then the other thing is, okay, so these are two male athletes, right? And this young woman is alone with them in this room, and they're apparently intent on doing harm to her. Two male athletes and one girl, and she gets out of there unscathed. You know, even if she hadn't had the witness detail issue, I'd have been doubtful. You know, I mean, I might have believed that there was a chance an allegation that they actually did something to her was true. And I might have believed if she just said, I said stop because it was really bothering me, and they stopped and apologized, but I think the behavior was inappropriate to begin with. That I might have believed, because a lot of people in high school do stupid stuff until somebody says something to them, boys and girls. But this is so unbelievable. It's ridiculous. And having it come out, this is as bad as Monica Lewinsky portraying herself as a victim after years and years of the Clinton issues being discussed. Like, she was consenting adult when it happened, and she's portraying herself now as a victim. Here's a woman who was a consenting participant in this guy getting away with what she accuses him of, if he did it. And now she's portraying herself as a victim, and now she's acting like this needs to come out. I just, the more you look at it, and the more details of this come out, the more that it's discussed, and the more you go over the details that have already come out, the dumber it looks as an accusation, and the less believable it is.
Not
Absolutely.
to poke any holes into what you just said, Hannah, but poke. My understanding of it was that the other witness in this, as you said, was an active participant, and it was this judge character.
Right.
So, devil's advocate, yeah, of course he would say nothing happened because he was apparently a participant in it. And as for the how'd she get out of this unscathed thing, again, as per her version of events, whether it's true or not, she said they were basically so drunk they were damn near incapacitated.
Well, and she can't have it both ways. Either they were assaulting her and they held her down and she was actually restrained, or they were too drunk to do that successfully and she got away. This is a lot like in the 7 Years in Hell story, when the accuser claimed that my friend had attacked her at the bus stop and she kicked him in the nuts 3 times, and then he ran away immediately after being kicked in the nuts 3 times by a 200-pound woman, 200 plus. And it's just, these details don't match up. It does not fit. And again, 2 guys holding, if there's 2 active participants, yeah, you can say, well, yeah, the witness would deny that it happened if he was an active participant, but then that just makes it less likely for her to be telling the truth about getting out of there unscathed. And you can say, well, she got out of there unscathed because they were incapacitated, but that just makes it less likely for it to be true that they had her properly restrained to where, she felt that she was under threat. You just can't have it both ways.
Okay, sure, granted. And the other thing is, this entirely hasn't come out of just thin air as of right now. I do believe while she was in therapy, she did basically share the story, but she did conveniently leave out any names at the moment. Basically said like, oh, well, they went on to become very, very, very powerful judges, and
she produced
I
notes
got no
from
recourse.
therapy. I'm aware of that, but this type of belief or this type of fantasy, this type of claim can exist for years. This could be something that she told herself or other people clear back in high school and stuck with her story for years and years, and it could be still false. And I've seen that happen too. The vexatious litigant from the 7 Years in Hell story is still telling people that her ex raped her, even after it was demonstrably made false by the fact that she changed her story on the details of the incident, the alleged incident, repeatedly until a detective couldn't pursue it anymore. This is not something that, like I said, it would be different if there were more believable details. It would be different if she didn't have so much contradiction in there. And yeah, having told a lie previously, having told the same lie for years and years, doesn't make it true. So if it's a lie, it doesn't matter if she started telling it years ago and she told it to a therapist and everything. In therapy, it's reasonable for the therapist to believe what the individual is saying. And in therapy, it's reasonable for the therapist to deal with things at face value. This person is claiming to have experienced this traumatic event. Let's deal with the trauma. But in terms of what repercussions the accused should face for that, none. The accused should face 0 repercussions for what a person said about him in therapy, because that's a therapeutic session setting, and that is the setting where the accuser should be believed. In any other setting, the accuser should be questioned, and the accused should be questioned. There should be no one believed automatically. This should be a situation where the evidence is examined, and if there is not proof that the accusation is true, then there should not be repercussions dumped on the accused, regardless of how traumatized the accuser claims to be. And the other thing is, to my understanding, the therapy session in which those notes came out, that dealt with recovered memory. And recovered memory is a questionable thing. Recovered memory is not necessarily evidence that something actually happened, especially in the hands of somebody who isn't an expert at bringing out memories without leading the person the way you might accidentally lead or deliberately lead the witness. So
Their memory is very unreliable, especially the longer it's been, the worse it gets.
And you can convince somebody to remember shit that never happened, and they will remember it so strongly and so convincingly that they will be absolutely 100% unquestionably certain that it happened the way that that memory tells them it happened, and it can still be wrong.
I just think she's lying. That's what I think. I'm sorry, but I'm open to being wrong if it turns out that that all of this is true. But the whole Me Too, sexual allegations, sexual harassment, rape, sexual misconduct stuff has gotten so out of control and most of it has come out to be bullshit, even though there are people who still believe some of this bullshit, that I just don't believe her. And the timing of this is just too convenient. Somebody is getting ready to be picked for Supreme Court Justice. They're on the board. They're a good choice according to our President of the United States. All of a sudden, a woman comes out of nowhere and she's like, this guy basically raped me. And it's too convenient. I just don't believe her. And I just don't. I'm sorry. And I'm glad that we have... Go ahead, Mike.
It's like what are the chances of him actually doing this crime as described, versus what are the chances of there being at least one woman who's willing to come forward with a story like this? One woman out of 150 million in the USA alone. The larger the population gets, the more likely you are to find at least one woman who's willing to go through with this. Well, I suppose you'd have to look locally to as few degrees as possible from the target in question, which in this case is the Supreme Court judge.
And then if you create a culture around it, around these rape accusations, where no one can say, I think she's a lying bitch, because that would be sexist or victim blaming or whatever, and the media will just dive on it, then everyone has to take this seriously and pretend like it's a real accusation while they go about trying to best navigate this minefield that she created by saying, I am pointing a finger and saying this man who is about to become Supreme Court Justice that Donald Trump likes raped me. And now everyone, they can't say, fuck off, you lying bitch. They have to, like, investigate, take it seriously, even though in their mind, a lot of people are probably saying, this bitch is lying, and we have to go through this with and take her seriously, and either hope that people stop caring about it, or the investigation yields no fruit, which of course it wouldn't if there was an investigation, because it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago. That you would come forward now, when this is happening, that is just, it just smells like so much horse shit to me. But, I'm sorry, Mike,
Yeah,
I cut
it
you
does.
off. I cut you off, Mike.
Yeah, I had two things to say and I forgot them both.
It's my fault. I'm sorry. Well, guys.
It's my fault, believe me.
Oh.
Well, while you're thinking of them, I'll point.
Well,
I'll
go ahead,
point one
Hannah.
thing out. You know, as far as I'm not against investigation. The thing that I'm against is impunity. So you have somebody who lies like this, and I'm going to come out and say I really do think that this was a lie. This may be a lie that she maintained for a very long time, but I do think this is a lie. So you got somebody that tells a lie, and it turns out to be a demonstrable lie, like in the case of the vexatious litigant that I talk about all the time. Nothing happens. You know, they tell these lies. They go to the police. They file a false complaint. The cops take it to the prosecuting attorney. The prosecuting attorney files a false charge because, you know, this lie has been told, and now it has to be investigated and prosecuted. And now you go to court because the prosecutor has filed charges, and they go into court and they perjure themselves. You know, and in some cases, in fact, in the vexatious litigant case, there was evidence that was falsified in some of the instances, not the rape accusation, but a violation of restraining order accusation. There was falsified evidence. She made a recording of a fake phone call that the prosecutor listened to it after listening to the victim actually talk, and said, I can't submit this. This isn't the same guy, and dropped the case. No prosecution for any of the things that she did. No, you know, it's illegal to file a false complaint to police. It's illegal to lie to police during an investigation, even over little things. You know, you're talking about something that has nothing to do with your car, and the cops ask you, is your car red? And your car is red. No, it's blue. That's a lie to the cops. You can actually be technically prosecuted for that. It's illegal to file a false charge. It's illegal to perjure yourself. It's illegal to submit false evidence, to lie about the evidence. All these things are laws that are being broken. It should be mandatory if it's demonstrable, if it's proved already in court that you have done one of these things. It should be mandatory to prosecute. It should be not tolerated at all. You know, if we're going to treat these allegations as a bludgeon, the way they are being treated in our society, then when these allegations are false, there should be serious repercussions for the liar. It's the only way to protect our society from being torn apart by people who find it politically convenient to lie about candidates, about job applicants, about politicians, about celebrities, about people who run companies, anybody that they want to get out of their way, anybody that they want to get revenge on, anybody that they don't like, anybody that they can find a convenient foil for their own attention seeking. That has to stop. And the only way is accountability. If the accuser is not accountable when the accusation is false, we're fucked.
We need
in this case still anonymous. She's, as far as we know, still not.
No, she isn't. She's come out of the woodwork.
Right. I was gonna say, because if they have license to keep any accuser anonymous, then that just increases the pool of people of potential people they can find. They can pretty much turn any woman into a loaded gun just with a couple of implanted memories, for instance. I don't know.
What we need is we need somebody that can like get the truth. Where's Parking Lot Batman when you need him? I know that we used to have him. I haven't seen him in a long time. I hope he survived whatever it is he was doing.
Stop it! You're hurting her.
You're hurting her, dude. Parking Lot Batman, investigate this fully. All right, I got some super chats, and then I guess we're gonna move on to the next story. By the way, yes, she did come forward. Her name is Christine Blasey Ford, and yeah, so that's the name of the woman. Albert Nada. So I got an old super chat from when I did the Dojanaden show on Friday from Albert Nada for $2 Canadian that says North Country is a movie starring Charlize Theron. It's just completely weird, out of context super chat, I know, but I should read it because it was donated. Ciara de Flora gives us $2 and says, I wonder how much she was paid to say this, referring to the accuser, obviously. I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, but at this point, I'm so cynical about these false accusations that are just so suspect that I don't think we should believe them, you know? Like, I'm starting to see where Paul Elam is coming from when he said, I forgot what it was he said. It was about how if he was on the jury for a rape case, he would consider the guy innocent no matter what, or something along those lines. It's a bit more complex than that, but you know what I'm talking about? If you want to,
that's the jury nullification article. Jury nullification is you don't, just because the evidence proves guilt or innocence doesn't mean you have to vote that way. And this is something that people don't normally know about. But if your conscience leads you to oppose the repercussions of what the evidence says, you as a juror can vote your conscience. Whether it's you feel that the law is wrong, whether in the case that he was discussing, you feel that the person could not have gotten a fair trial, whatever, you can vote the opposite. Well, what Paul was talking about is, it's impossible for a man in the United States accused of rape, and this is true in other countries as well. It's true in the UK, it's true in Canada. It's impossible for him to get a genuinely fair trial. Every man who has been acquitted in these countries in the last probably 30 years has been acquitted against the odds, because there are types of exculpatory evidence that are excluded from the courtroom. There are means of dealing with your accuser. For instance, you don't have the right to confront your accuser in the UK. In Mark Pearson's case, his accuser was behind a curtain. The only thing he could see was her hand. So, like, there are...
The only reason we even know about that story is that the accuser was a celebrity, D-list celebrity, and makes you wonder how many times it happens with regular women and doesn't make any, news in anyone's blog.
Exactly. And these are things that detract from the capability to give a fair trial to these allegations. And so you can never be sure, even if guilt is proved, that there wasn't evidence excluded from the case that would have proved innocence, or that would have brought guilt into reasonable doubt. And so under that circumstance, it's reasonable to say, I would always vote to acquit. And I agree with him. And I hate to say that, because I know that the crime does happen. I know both sexes do commit that crime on rare occasions. But the reality is, men can't get a fair trial when they face accusations of sexual violence. And you can never be sure, if you are on the jury in a sexual violence case, that the evidence that makes the individual look guilty isn't contradicted by something that you were not allowed to see. And I'm a very vehement proponent of just letting all of the evidence in, and the lawyers should be responsible for arguing as to whether or not it's relevant, in what way, and what its real meaning is. And that's their job. That's the kind of thing they should be arguing. The law shouldn't be so complicated that you need them for that. But the logic, that's the kind of thing that lawyers should be there for. And instead, they're arguing with the judge on points of law and getting evidence excluded, and the jury never gets to see it. So that's what Paul was talking about in that article.
Thanks for explaining it better.
There's a time and a place for everything, but I think the question is a jury the time and the place for protest, for activism? Arguably, yes. Arguably, it's if you're called upon to be on a jury, then that is the perfect opportunity to make a statement with your activism. It might just result in a null jury, and they'll have to bring someone else in. But hey,
you made a point at
exactly.
least. So I saw in the chat that Parking Lot Batman has just returned. So now he can. I feel like the live chat is a little bit safer, especially the women in there, because I know that's what he does. He makes sure that no women are getting hurt. So thank you, Ciara de Flora, for that $2 comment. Albert Nada gives us $10 Canadian and says, just to follow up from my last super chat message, North Country is a woman. North Country is a movie starring Charlize Theron, who is definitely a woman. Hope you'll talk about my findings in a video soon. I'll check out your channel later on after the show. Hokey Pukisa gives us $4.99 and says, why the fuck lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God, stop fucking lying. It's the song. I know. I didn't want to sing it, though.
Get in the car, there's a fucking lion. I connected it to another meme.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that was good.
It's like another meme. 12 years apart, these memes, and I'm just bringing them together. Just like...
There you go. Making bridges, not walls. Redicus gives us $10 and says, I require a blue jizz stained dress to muster RHW lynch mob. But in seriousness, it is a 35-year accusation from a Democrat donor in the 11th hour from a professor in the social sciences. Yeah. Very suspicious. Not just suspicious, just like smells like bullshit, man. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says, what do you think will kill the Me Too movement? I don't think
old age.
and
it's got that sort of progeria disease where it's only going to last a few years.
Yeah.
Because it was born into an age of people with very short attention spans when it comes to the media and glamorous things. It's going to die of old age and very soon.
Yeah, what'll kill the Me Too movement is if some astute individual goes through and analyzes the public accusations that have been made and the public accusations that have fallen apart, and maybe look at how many of them are credible versus how many of them appear to be frivolous, and discovers that it's a rather high percentage of frivolous accusations in comparison to, say, and look at the university ones as well, in comparison to, say, what feminists like to tell people about 2% of false accusations, or accusations being false. Because the minute it starts to become obvious that making those allegations publicly for attention leads to an increase in the recognition of false accusations, they'll stop making it a public thing.
Mm-hmm. This is also why we need to draw more attention, and there needs to be more exposure shined on the Innocence Project, because they've been doing a lot of really great work showing that they're the degree to which there are men who are falsely not just accused but incarcerated. They're found guilty and incarcerated for rape or sexual assault or worse, and they are serving prison time. And so these guys are getting them, because of the DNA testing and all that, they've been able to find that a lot of men are turning out, they're innocent, and that, women lie sometimes. So, all right, so we're going to move on to the next story, but tell us what you guys think. Am I wrong? Do you think this woman has actually been telling the truth? Is Brett Kavanaugh a rapist? Or is it just bullshit? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to hear that. So we're going to move on to the next story. Now we're talking about, speaking of the Me Too movement and all of the destruction that it leaves in its wake, even people who had nothing to do with sexual assault whatsoever are not safe. We're going to be talking about Norm Macdonald. So, Mike J., if you could, please.
I indeed can and will. While discussing his upcoming Netflix show, specifically why it won't be going political, Stand-up comedian, writer, and actor Norm Macdonald made mention of the hashtag #MeToo movement. Macdonald stated, "I'm happy the hashtag #MeToo movement has slowed down a little bit. It used to be 100 women can't be lying, and then it became 1 woman can't lie. And that became, I believe all women. And then you're like, what? Like that Chris Hardwick guy I really thought got the blunt end of the stick there." End quote. McDonald also commented on the similar situations concerning Roseanne Barr and Louis C.K., who are both friends of his. Quote, "There are very few people that have gone through what they have, losing everything in a day. Of course, people will go, what about the victims? But you know what? The victims didn't have to go through that." Progressive outlets were quick to jump onto McDonald, and it appears that The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon has canceled his upcoming appearance as a direct response to his comments. McDonald was quick to apologize over Twitter, saying, "Roseanne and Louis have both been very good friends of mine for many years. They both made terrible mistakes, and I would never defend their actions. If my words sounded like I was minimalizing the pain that the victims feel to this day, I am deeply sorry." End quote. The cooling drama was then reignited during McDonald's appearance on The Howard Stern Show, where he stated that, quote, "You'd have to have Down syndrome to not feel sorry for victims of harassment." End quote. Later on an appearance on The View, McDonald's apologized again, stating, quote, "I realized at the moment I did something unforgivable. The remark I said about people with Down syndrome was a terrible, terrible thing for me to say." End quote. However, despite these setbacks, the first season of Norm Macdonald's show, entitled Norm Macdonald Has a Show, debuted on Netflix last week without any issue.
How are you supposed to know when Norm Macdonald's not being sarcastic? Every time, everything he says, every time he talks, it sounds like he could go either way. You don't know where he's going. He's a very smart guy, but I this might be a sign that he's hungry for attention. He's hungry for the attention he gets from all these appearances where he just sits on a sofa and just is Norm, and it appeals to people. I think maybe as smart a guy as he is, he's got the bug for that, and he doesn't want to lose it. Right?
I'm just shocked to discover that he hasn't been serious this whole time. Just absolutely. I always thought he was a serious guy. Everything he said was 100% serious.
I thought so too.
Believed everything he said. You know, Tom Green's got to be sitting there chewing his fingernails, going, "Gosh, you know, they're going after Norm." Jesus Christ! Like, now, yeah, the thing you said about Down syndrome was kind of stupid. This is not an environment in which you can make fun of people's handicaps anymore, and expect that people are going to just, at least not in that particular, even on the Howard Stern show, you can't, 10, 15, 20 years ago, would have flown just fine. Everybody would have said you're oversensitive for even objecting to it. Now, there are groups of people that are off limits. You could make fun of, somebody who's a dingbat, somebody who's just plain scatterbrained. You got a character like Goldie Hawn used to play. Those are still playable, especially if you make the dingbat male instead of female. But if you take somebody with a diagnosis, that's a different story. Society's going to have a fit about that. And of course, that particular handicap is one that's been adopted by regressives. So, now that they want to make the unusual or abnormal the norm, you have to have supermodels with Down syndrome and stuff like that. And I have no problem with people being uplifted. I have no problem with recognizing that meanness is meanness and some things are stupid to say. But for there to be a group of people that's off limits for someone's ordinary humor, it just, I don't know, something about that is equally stupid. And it singles them out. It says, well, part of these people's handicap is that they cannot handle the same types of socialization that everyone else is expected to participate in or have foisted onto them. And that's kind of isolating. You know, at the same time as saying, yeah, it's rotten to make fun of people for their handicaps, we make fun of people for everything. Humanity makes fun of people for everything. I get made fun of for my teeth. You know, I occasionally get made fun of for the lisp that my teeth cause. That's a biological thing. It's not going to change. And I don't get mad about it, because human beings, part of how we socialize is poking fun at each other. But
yeah, we have to be able to laugh at it. I mean, like I was doing a show over the weekend. I think it was on Sunday, and it was for the patrons. And there was a patron who was in the chat. I won't say his name, but we were talking a bit about this story, and he said that, you know, he lives in a place where there are people that have various developmental handicaps, all sort of like share, you know, spend time together. And he said that, like, you know, people with Down syndrome and people with Asperger's or autism or whatever, they're all in there making fun of each other for their handicaps, and they think it's hilarious. And so I'm not saying that should make it okay, because really, Norm Macdonald was not talking about people with Down syndrome. He actually clarifies on The View, and I think it should have been self-evident, that he said, you know, we used to use another word instead of Down syndrome. He didn't say what the word was, but I think he meant, you know, retard.
Mongoloid.
Yeah.
Mongoloid, yeah, sure. But I think he meant retard, right? And he said, but then that became politically incorrect. So he was like, well, I thought that this word or this term would be better, but apparently this is also not okay. And the fact is, it wasn't actually about people with Down syndrome or retards. It was about people who the absurdity that people would not feel sorry for harassment victims. Because, I mean, if he'd have said you'd have to be a spurg not to feel sorry for harassment victims.
Well, yeah, he set up an apology, and then you know, the payoff of the joke was he was extremely insensitive with the way he insulted those people, thereby destroying the setup of the apology. That's why it's an obviously sarcastic not apology. And when he goes on to say, oh, it was a terrible, terrible thing for me to say about people with Down syndrome. Yes, that was the point of the joke. To me, it sounds like he's just explaining the joke.
It is. And I think he was actually engaging in some like next level trolling on The View too, because he says this, and this is the thing that I was thinking about today. He says, the moment I realized that I did something unforgivable, that remark I made about people with Down syndrome was a terrible, terrible thing for me to say. And then the women on the panel, they kind of see that he's like, you know, it sounds like he's like just like flogging himself, right? And then they sort of like, you know, they go easy on him, and then he says, I hope I didn't offend any of you guys with that. And like, he does it in such a tender way, you know, that makes him like this sad puppy dog. And so they don't recognize that, I think, that in a way he was basically saying they're all retards. Because he's saying, I hope I didn't offend you with my comments about people with Down syndrome, because you guys are obviously retards. Because, I mean, if he could have said it however he wanted to. And also, I think it's also worth pointing out, the Down syndrome comment got him in trouble on The View, but if he'd have said spurgs or incels or something else, he might not have gotten on that much shit for it. If he was on Howard Stern, he might not have.
Well, and the thing I was going to finish up with is, imagine if you were part of a group of people that, because you have, and we, in a way, we all can imagine that because we're all nerds and geeks. If you have something about yourself that makes it impossible or very difficult, at the very least, for you to be part of the world social group, for you to be normally socialized in terms of your interactions with other people, that there's a thing that's always out there. And it's like the elephant in the room. This is here, this is present, this is open and obvious. Anytime you're in a social setting and you cannot socialize, you can't be part of a social group, you can't be involved in a social activity, any of that, without that being a factor in it. And then on top of all of that, you get told, but you can't use one of the main tools other people use to socialize with each other, and they can't use that to socialize with you because this elephant in the room makes you off limits for that particular tool. And you have to be offended. You have to be hurt and upset when they use that tool of socialization in order to try to socialize with you the way they might socialize with other people. How much easier would it make that for you to fit in? That's what we do with people with handicaps or other differences when we say everybody else can be razzed, but this group is off limits.
Exactly.
Well, M. Night Shyamalan did a movie about a dude with dissociative identity disorder, played by James McAvoy, and it was all right. For a late Shyamalan film, it's better than it could have been. But maybe that's what we need to break the taboo on Down syndrome. We need a horror movie with a Down syndrome villain.
Whoa!
I support this.
I want to see this movie. Wait, I thought that was. Isn't that what Friday the 13th was?
Kind of. I have another question about this. Roseanne has victims. Louis C.K. has victims. Who were their victims?
Nobody.
You don't want to go down
Roseanne
that rabbit hole.
No,
Roseanne
I'm sorry, but
thought
Roseanne
the bitch was white. She said it.
That's just it. But words. Even if she knew, what she said wasn't racist. And
it wasn't.
The individual she said it about wasn't a victim of her words.
No, she survived. As far as I know, she's still alive.
Yeah, and the whole thing with Louis C.K. was consensual. So there's no victim there either. This idea that they had victims
over them, Hannah.
Oh yeah, power. I'm sorry, but I don't consider myself to have any power over anybody that has called themselves my fans. It's still weird for me to even use the phrase "my fans." I don't that like feels arrogant and crazy.
It wasn't a fan thing. It was a coworker thing. He said that they said that because he was in the position to make or break them. So because
it was other comedians, which is why I find it so weird because among comedian circles, getting your dick out is just part of the show. It's a rite of passage to have a bit in your act where you get your dick out or something. At least if you play the dive circuits in that. Like, to a comedian, getting your dick out is nothing. At least for any comedian who's worth their salt.
Yeah, I'm not buying the make or break idea either, though. That's baloney. You in a profession like that, you get made or broken on your talents and your skills and your popularity, and you cannot be stopped from making it in comedy if you are genuinely funny. And you are going to make the venues that host you money. You cannot be stopped by somebody who says, "Well, I don't like that." But they would have to come up with a really damn good reason to be able to stop you.
But how do you explain Amy Schumer then, Hannah? How does Amy Schumer have a job? How does Samantha Bee have a job?
Amy Schumer actually has fans. I don't understand them.
Who finds them funny?
Yeah, she has fans, and there's a lot of people out there that like her particular brand of humor, and that's their prerogative. That's fine.
There's a lot of people like her out there who are also not very funny and not very easy on the eye and not very.
Yeah.
Oh, I went as easy as I possibly could on her there.
That was really nice.
I'm not gonna be easy on her. She's a feminist, right? So by feminist standards, like, she shouldn't be exempt. She's supposed to be equal to men. Therefore, she shouldn't be exempt to the standards that are applied to men. And by the standards feminists apply to men, she's a rapist. Yep. So as far as I'm concerned, Amy Schumer, by the standards of her own movement, Amy Schumer should be in jail. And Amy Schumer should be Me Too'd.
Not just that.
Now,
I mean, this is not Me Too. Isn't just about like justice for victims. It's about the accused having their lives ruined beyond repair to where they should never work again. They should never have livelihoods. They should just be homeless people that maybe will just die in a gutter somewhere on on heroin, just out of our lives forever. That's what they want. There's no redemption arc for Louis C.K. when he was basically saying, thinking about coming back into the fold, and I guess he is. There are people like, it's too soon. We just got rid of him. He should basically never return. They don't have a plan B. It's just destroy this person completely. Except, of course, if your name is Asia Argento, in which case you get to sue the people who are making accusations against you instead, because feminism is about equality.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the thing. You won't hear feminists calling for Amy Schumer to be Me Too'd, even though, by her own admission, by her own bragging, she bragged about it.
It was a stand-up routine.
It wasn't a stand-up routine. She made a speech at a gala for women. It wasn't, on a stage where she had an audience that paid to go see her because she was doing comedy. She was giving a personal anecdote about how her self-esteem was or how she learned to not base her self-esteem on what other people thought of her. And her personal anecdote was that she got a spur of the moment phone call from a college classmate, schoolmate, and went to his place and found him so blind, stinking drunk that he couldn't even look at her straight and couldn't stay awake, and had sex with him. And it bolstered her ego. And, like I said, if a guy said that, oh yeah, I went to her dorm room and she was so blind, stinking drunk that she couldn't see straight and she kept passing out while I let her give me a blowjob.
Let me tell you about this
time
Let me tell you about this time I raped a chick. It gave me so much confidence.
So, I'm sorry, but if we are going to have the same standards, this is what Brock Turner was convicted of sexual assault for. This guy was at a party where a girl who was old enough to be out of school showed up, and technically a woman, but obviously not grown up, shows up at this college party, wanders off with him, and obviously going off to some guy's room in the middle of the night when you're drunk, you're going, to play like Scrabble. He probably had the game already set up and was just waiting for the right girl to come along and go play Scrabble with him alone in his dorm room at night. And they didn't make it all the way there. They got started playing Scrabble early in the alley, and she passes out in the middle of it, and he's too drunk to notice, so he's a rapist. Schumer was sober, according to her story, 100% stone cold sober. And she goes to the guy's house. She knew he was drunk when she walked in the door. She knew he was drunk when he opened the door. She didn't even have to go in. And yet she went in. She went along with it. She went through the whole thing. And then she tells this story about it later on. And nobody says, do you realize that you have just admitted to raping a guy when you were in college? By the standards that feminists set.
I think maybe one or two of her friends said it, but she was never brought onto The View to be grilled about it.
Certainly not. And in fact, David Futrell actually made all of the same excuses that feminists call rape apology when they are brought up when a man is accused of rape over drunk sex. He responded to a Thought Catalog article actually titled, "Wait, did Amy Schumer just admit she raped a guy?" or something like that. Wait, did Amy Schumer rape a guy? And went through it and labeled the incident consensual, even though the guy was clearly too drunk to appraise his actions. Labeled the incident consensual, and said that that made everything okay. Even though you have a entirely sober person showing up at the residence of someone too drunk to see straight and proceeding to have sex with that person while the drunk person is passing in and out of consciousness. It's consensual. Why? Because the alleged victim was a guy and the alleged rapist was a gal who happens to be popular with feminists. So I got nothing against people who think she's funny. I got nothing against people who like that particular type of humor. Everybody has their own taste in humor. Everybody has their own taste in art. Everybody has their own taste in everything. That's fine. But if you're going to set a standard and say, this is the line between consent and non-consensual activity, this is the line between okay and rape, you don't get to make exceptions because you want to claim this success from your side. That's bullshit.
Yeah, to drag it back to the story, if we're not putting Amy Schumer on the stand for things she's confessed to doing, then why is Norm Macdonald on the stand for saying things?
Yeah, well, basically he just said, I think this has gone too far. He said, I'm glad that it's slowing down. That's all. That's it. That's what he said. He said that, and he stuck up for his friend, Chris Hardwick and Roseanne Barr. That was all he did. He wasn't accused of anything. He wasn't part of the Me Too thing. He was an outside observer that just said, you know what, I think this is going too far. Also, let me also add, Sean Penn yesterday, Sean Penn has said that it's gone too far. But somehow, I don't think he's going to end up on The View getting grilled because Sean Penn is a little bit more of an activist than he is an actor. Am I right? But the thing that I guess want to leave with you guys here is this happened to Norm Macdonald. He almost lost his show. He wasn't allowed to appear on The Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon he claimed there were people on his team crying, that part of his crew crying because of Norm Macdonald's comments. You would think that Norm Macdonald was talking about, like gassing the Jews or something, but he didn't do that. He just said, you know what, I'm glad the Me Too thing is slowing down because I think that it's gotten out of hand. I think Chris Hardwick got the blunt end of the stick there. Like, they're trying to destroy his life. And what happens? The Me Too movement tries to destroy Norm Macdonald's life. Proving him right, by the way. He didn't even get accused of anything. This is the reason why this is ridiculous. And also, last thing, I know you guys know this, never apologize to these people. Ever. I don't care if you're actually, unless you're actually wrong and you want to clear the air, but seriously, never apologize to these people.
Unless you're doing it sarcastically and successfully sarcastically, and bear in mind it's very difficult to use sarcasm around these people. They won't understand it. It's not like autistics though. It's a very different kind of misunderstanding. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite kind. It's the borderline type misunderstanding.
Yeah. They
only recognize sarcasm if it fits their narrative.
Okay, so I got a couple super chats. Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, I might as well become gay. At this point, I'm scared that I'll be accused of rape for smiling at a girl while male feminists get with actual rape. I think he means get on with actual rape or get away with actual rape. No, male feminists are not spared. They get their lives ruined too. It's actually, there's a counter for that. The male feminists get accused more often, I think, than regular dudes. Falcon Millennial gives us
something I want to add here, just because it's been brought up a couple. There's not a formula to make yourself immune to false accusations. There's only a formula for dealing with them once they've happened. And this is, frankly, I think most men should be, making it easy for themselves to document if they have that kind of risk. Even if you're gay, even if you're an incel, if you have to deal with women at some point in your day on any given day, be able to prove where you were and what you were doing so that you can't get railroaded based on somebody saying that you did something that you didn't do. That's it. Nothing else is going to work but being able to prove what you were doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. Falcon Millennials gives us $5 and says, like we say in the South, dem did it, must be bullshit. And Miss Roboto gives us $2 and says, one day the word female/woman will be a no-no word. Yeah, they'll call it the F word or the W word or something. Miss Roboto gives us another $2 and says, the death of comedy is upon us all if you are funny. Well, I mean, in order to be funny, you have to be kind of offensive, right? I mean, a little bit. At least there's that brand of humor, but... yeah, I don't know, man. It doesn't look good. Okay, so let's move on to the next story. UK Parliament member, so this isn't just going to be about American politics. We're going to be going to the UK now. UK Parliament member Lucy Powell of the Labour Party wants to ban private Facebook groups. From Reason.com. Powell introduced legislation in the House of Commons this week that would ban secret, private, invite-only groups on Facebook. It would go so far as to hold moderators legally responsible for hate speech or defamation on the forums. Powell penned an article for The Guardian entitled, Why Am I Seeking to Stamp Out Online Echo Chambers of Hate, that lays out her reasoning. She believes unchecked private online discussions radicalize people in, quote, bubbles of hate, giving the examples of Tommy Robinson supporters, an increase in Islamophobia, and Russia's interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. I don't know if you guys heard about those things.
Is there such a thing as Russophobia? What if we invent that? What's going to happen?
Ruskophobia, is that what we call it? Or well, nothing will happen because they're white. You can't be afraid of white people, even Russians.
Never heard of black Russians?
While Reason notes that she doesn't mention punishment for radicals in these private groups for their hate speech in her Guardian article, her consideration of the bill explicitly says that too few people have been prosecuted under the United Kingdom's Communications Act, which criminalizes online hate speech. Quote, online hate...
Too few people have been prosecuted.
Too few people. Yeah, not enough people.
Not too few people have committed the crime, but too few people have been prosecuted. Like, we were really hoping to catch, like, quadruple figures by now. Get on with
it. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
That's right. Online hate crimes, this is a quote from the act, online hate crimes are still rarely prosecuted and go largely unreported.
Because they're not crimes!
Our laws...
Also, they're not happening necessarily in the numbers
maybe they're
they
not
think
happening.
They are.
Yeah.
Now, as they say in South Yorkshire, it doesn't matter if it's a hate crime or not. It just report it if it's not a crime, and we'll treat it like it's a crime. That's a normal thing to do in a non-totalitarian state.
Yes, that's right. Our laws desperately need to catch up. Today, I am proposing a small step to establish clear accountability in law for what is published on online forums and to force those who run the forums no longer to permit hate, disinformation, and criminal activity. Wow. Disinformation against the law. Do you have a license for that disinformation? Tweet from the South Yorkshire Police. Hold on a second. Here it is. In addition to reporting hate crime, please report non-crime hate incidents. So non-crime hate incidents, which can include things like offensive or insulting comments online, in person, or in writing. Hate will not be tolerated in South Yorkshire. Report it and put a stop to it. Quote, hashtag hate hurts SY. Press F to pay respects to the UK, or at least South Yorkshire, right? So
I smell backfire. You think about this, these little echo chambers that she's worried about are nothing compared to the echo chambers that get set up by the special snowflakes of the social justice end of the political spectrum. This is the group, this is the population that blocks everybody. This is the population that invented block lists to create their own little echo chambers. This is the population that not only will not listen to speech that contradicts their narrative, but actually isolates themselves from anything that even remotely might be considered a threat to their narrative. And this is the population that thinks it's perfectly all right to say the most racist, sexist, hateful things they possibly can say, as long as they're talking about straight, white males. And if they're going to enforce this kind of thing, all of that is going to come out. It's going to become obvious, even though they may not prosecute for that particular brand of hate speech, it's going to become obvious that the vast, overwhelming majority of hateful, nasty, insulting, belligerent, cruel, and heartless things that are said on the internet are directed at straight white males by social justice ideologues. I smell backfire. Boy,
they
does it
ain't gonna
stink.
spend it. They ain't gonna spend a day in jail though.
No, they won't care. But it's still going to completely ruin their narrative. Completely.
Hate is a lot like harassment. It's a word that's never explained. It's shoved in there to mean whatever it's supposed to mean. And do you know what I mean? It shouldn't be the police's job to deal with hate.
No, it shouldn't.
Whatever that means. I don't even know what that means.
All they should have to do is keep us safe from robbers and murderers and direct the traffic. They should not be in the business of moral policing. That's why they should have never got into the business of arresting people for drugs, and they certainly shouldn't get into the business of what people say, either online or offline or anything, because it's not the business of the police what kind of opinions people have. They're there to, for when it does get violent. And obviously, now we're supposed to talk about the line. Well, I suppose violence doesn't come out of a clear blue sky. Often there's always talk before there's violence. Well, not always.
Talk until there's violence after talk has been taken away. That's when the violence comes.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you cannot work things out through talk, if there are certain positions, certain experiences, certain people's lives are off limits for discussion and can be considered illegitimate, the only thing left is violence.
Yeah, I remember the first thing I was going to say. Hate is like harassment, because making false claims of harassment at someone is a form of harassment, and accusing people of hate is a form of hate, especially when it's obvious that you're directing it at white males. This is what it looks like when a state that is excused for everything it does points its hate at one particular group. They just get away with it.
Here's another question in this tweet. Why does it say, this is rhetorical, I guess, but it says here, essentially they're saying, don't just report hate crimes, but also report non-hate crimes, which are basically non-crime hate incidents. Right. Yeah, non-crime hate incidents, like offensive or insulting comments, online, in person, or in writing. That's terrifying.
Yeah, it's especially as a British person, like 100 years ago in this country, and like even insulting a man's tie would be, I must duel you, sir, at 10 paces at once. You have insulted my honor. It was like everyone. Well, maybe that's just a stereotype. So we would never dream of actually making it illegal by law to be offensive or insulting, because it's going to completely thin the herd of people who never get offended or insulted because they're fucking mature, leaving us with nothing but the crybabies and the snowflakes. Ugh.
That's
now, instead of dueling you at dawn at 10 paces with pistols, they send the cops after you. But I'm wondering, did the South Yorkshire Police put contact information out on Twitter for people to report these crimes? Because
it looks like it's some kind of a campaign or something. So I don't see anything on this tweet in particular.
That's a mistake if they did. I mean, shoot, what university was it? It wasn't Amherst. Oxford, I think, put out their contact information. They put their reporting information so you could report incidents of sexual assault or sexual harassment, any kind of misconduct like that, to the university administrators that handled that, the Title IX administration office or whatever. They put it online, and it was publicly visible and publicly available. And of course, 4chan found the contact information and did what 4chan does. And there were Redditors that got involved as well. I was viciously assaulted by several Disney characters personally. But in any case, this should have led them to understand that information should only have been made available to the students on their campus and not the general public at large. But instead, of course, they bitched about it, that people took advantage. And I'm thinking the South Yorkshire Police might need the same lesson if they have put the information out publicly all over, asking people to report non-crime hate incidents. Everybody should contact the South Yorkshire Police and report that tweet as an insult to their intelligence, that they are deeply offended that the South Yorkshire Police tweeted out such a ridiculous statement, and they want it investigated and action taken immediately against the responsible parties.
Have they even put an age limit on it? Like if you're in kindergarten, one of the other kids says something mean about you, can you report that as a non-crime hate incident?
Shut up,
most definitely.
Dirty head!
I mean, what is the cutoff? 10 years old, 12 years old, 16? What?
Not going young enough. We got to report these fuckers in the womb.
Because like Hannah was just saying, it's the people who have a working sense of humor who are going to be hurt by this.
Well, at the very least, right now, it seems that there aren't a lot of people that are liking this stuff. There's a lot of dissent on Twitter and in the comment section of this article. Although, to be fair, this article is Reason. This is Reason.com, and so the people who look at this sort of stuff are probably going to be against it anyway. And she's trying to pass legislation to remove private Facebook groups because she's worried that you're using hate speech. But that doesn't mean it's happened. It's something that it's being proposed, and I hope that people will respond in the way that seems the most logical and reject it entirely. So that's all I can say about that. I got a couple of super chats. Does anybody have any final thoughts on this article before we move on?
Just that everybody talking about this should refer to it as the Powell Anti-Privacy Legislation or Anti-Privacy Act. It should say her name. Her name should be associated with it, and it should be called anti-privacy. Every place you can talk about it. And it should never, ever be something that she can get out from under. 20 years from now, people should still remember that she pushed the Powell Anti-Privacy Act.
Labor Party is, I don't know much about them, but so far I have not been impressed. I'm just going to put that out there. Not impressed.
They haven't always been this bad. It's only since Corbyn took over that they went full Mao. Although they haven't managed to win an election in 30 years except for Tony Blair. Tony Blair was the one three-term blip on an otherwise conservative across the board government. So history is going to be made, I think, because it's either the Tories or Labour, and they're both utterly incompetent in not too dissimilar ways. No wonder people are going to UKIP.
That could be interesting, but yeah. So we'll see. All right, so let me get the rest of the super chats out. Redicus gives us $2 and says, "Doesn't this lady have a pulled hijab to look into?" Field of Bears gives us $2 and says, "All of your ties are dreadfully tacky." And then he gives
report that, man.
Yes, report him for hate crime-oriented, non-crime hate incidents. That's what that was. And he did it again. Field of Bears gives another $2 and also says, "All of your ties are dreadfully tacky." Now it's harassment. Now it's stalking.
I mean, I don't want to be the guy telling the police what to do, but I'm pretty sure their job is to sort out crimes, not non-crimes. I'm pretty sure by definition, that's not the job of the police to deal with non-crime. Even if it's hateful non-crime, it's non-crime. It requires the non-police. Do you have the number for the non-police?
997-689. I forget the whole thing, but let's think about the IT crowd. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next story. Thank you so much for the super chats, people, and tell us what you think about this. You think this has a chance of being passed in the UK? Do you think that this is actually something that's possible, that we're probably, like, maybe not taking seriously enough? Give us your thoughts. And I'm going to hand it off to Mike J to tell us about the latest protest, I guess.
Sure, we can call it that. The pistol-packing professor protests the presidents. On the morning of August 28th, inside the College of Southern Nevada, Professor Mark J. Bird, age 69, carried a .22 caliber handgun onto campus. Although he was not scheduled to teach for the fall 2018 semester, Bird entered the Charleston Campus K building and found a vacant bathroom. After taping a $100 bill to the mirror with a note saying, quote, "For the janitor," Bird then proceeded to use the pistol to shoot himself in the arm. Bird staggered out of the bathroom and eventually collapsed as he bled profusely from the self-inflicted gunshot wound. College employees and students rushed to his side to calm him down and help stop the bleeding. The police report makes mention that Bird said, quote, "He's protesting Trump and that he shot himself because of that," end quote, but did not elaborate any further than this. While in the Clark County Detention Center, Bird agreed to an interview but did not reveal much, stating, quote, "It's probably in my best interest not to say much. I don't want to go into detail. It's too complex for a 30 or 60-minute news segment," end quote. Bird has been charged with possessing a dangerous weapon on school property, discharging a gun within a prohibited structure, and carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. His preliminary hearing began yesterday.
Only in regressive academia could such an idiot take aim at his arm and manage to still shoot himself in the foot.
Gonna say that joke. God damn it, Hannah.
I was trying to work towards it as well. I was going to work it in at the end of whatever you were going to say.
Work alike. Oh my God, this is so stupid. And the laws he broke are all laws that his side of the political fence fought for. I mean, can you become more of a dumbass? He really showed Trump. He injured himself.
He ever survived
arrested.
The orange Cheeto dotard blump will never recover from this immense and amazing protest.
I heard Trump is stepping down immediately.
He just demonstrated how effective all of those laws are because they totally stopped him. Oh, wait, no, they didn't.
Well, he's left the teaching profession in disgrace, and it was either this or false accusations of pedophilia, so maybe this is better. It's a better way to go out, right?
At least he can plead illness, mental illness or something for this. I'm crazy. Why? You got to believe me that I'm crazy. I mean, why would anybody do something like this besides that they were crazy?
You just want to shoot kids. That's your problem. You're going around discharging guns in schools. You want to shoot kids. ... You want to fuck kids. Pedo! And then the mob arrive.
You're fired.
That takes on a lot of meanings now that I think about it. Well, you know, I don't have much else to say on it. I thought it was just a funny story. There's a part of me that says, I hope all the sociology professors follow suit with protests like this. We need more of this. But then at the same time, I don't wish harm on these people. I just want them to get help. Get help. Clean your room. Something. Jesus Christ. Go into the...
use firearms responsibly, for God's sake. Oh.
Well, and then the other thing is, if you're going to make a mess like that in a bathroom of any facility where a janitor has to come in and clean up, please understand that $100 in today's world of microbes and antibiotic resistant diseases, $100 is nowhere near enough for you to ask somebody to clean up a stranger's blood when it isn't their normal job. It's not the job they signed up for.
He has a low opinion of the janitorial staff at this college. Naughty, yeah, Naughty Design. It's not a super chat, but he helps me a lot with the thumbnails. He says, "Aim for the head." I just want to respond by saying it wouldn't have done anything, Naughty. There are no vital organs in the head of this sociology professor, so there would have been no harm done. Probably would have bled more, though, made more of a mess. The scalp bleeds a lot, so...
You know, technically, the gut does count as another brain. It has a similar structure, and it's often described as a primitive brain. So maybe one of those organisms that thinks out of his ass, because it doesn't actually have a head.
There you go.
The more you know! Or the more you dream manically and say stupid things that you shouldn't say. Get on with it!
Okay, so we're going to... okay, Michael Keller says, please ask Hannah if Trump derangement syndrome is now official IDC-10, as she suggested. Seek help.
You know, there are people actually seeking therapy for it. It's it's official. It's an actual disorder now. They're not calling it that, but that's what they're seeking therapy for. That's been reported in the news in the last month or so. So, yep, Trump derangement syndrome is an official thing.
Well, the first symptom is literally shaking.
That's good. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the last story, and it's not much to it, although it is a bit long-winded, but that's okay. We're gonna get into it now. This should be interesting. It's a little silly, so. The cartoon that captures the damaged American male. Rick and Morty is a dialectic of masculinity unmoored. That's right. Rick and Morty is about masculinity or something. 7 more seasons of Rick and Morty? Jesus Christ. This show is already a kind of pop cultural omega point, a metaphysical ultimatum, a slurping spoof spiral, an uncorked algorithm of chaos that produces chaos ripples in the actual non-TV world. If you know any 18 to 34-year-olds, they likely enjoy or perhaps fearfully consume Rick and Morty. It was the #1 comedy in America for that age bracket last year. Its fan base is fetishistic and wildly entitled. I have wept with laughter at Rick and Morty. I have flinched in repulsion. The humor oscillates between an ingrown broness, a cackling in the man cave, and something so emancipated and post-everything that it is nearly transcendent. Nearly, but not. Nope. Nobody exists on purpose, says Morty to his sister. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everyone's gonna die. Come watch TV. Rick, burping warlock of the spaceways, puts it differently. When you know nothing matters, the universe is yours. If you've been wondering why Jordan B. Peterson, the Canadian professor, because that's got something to do with this, but let's move on. Guru of modern masculinity and author of 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, has been selling so many books and filling so many theaters. This is why.
Okay, I get it. So Peterson is Rick, right? So who's Morty? Oh, Ben Shapiro. It must be.
It's about the same size.
Yeah, he'd play a good Morty, I think. Needs to slow his voice down a bit and swear a bit more.
Somebody make that Photoshop happen. Get a Peterson head and put it on Rick's body, and get a Shapiro head and put it on Morty's body. That would be amazing. Thank you. Okay, so where was I? I can't get that image out of my head now. It's so funny. So the reason for Jordan B. Peterson's success is Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty is why. It's no surprise, really, that a small and well-documented subset of the Rick and Morty fanbase exhibits terrible, snickering, alienated white male troll behavior. The female writers who were hired for the show's third season were infamously harassed and abused by this mob. I loathe these people, co-creator Harmons commented at the time. It fucking sucks, but it makes sense. Rick Sanchez himself is a time troll, a transgressive brain, an avatar of barbed aloneness and free-floating male scorn. Everywhere he goes, on every plane and platform, Rick leaves comments. On the planet Gazorp, where women rule and men are enslaved, he lets rip a rending, endless, wholly chauvinistic fart. Dragged cursing to family therapy in the Emmy-nominated episode Pickle Rick, that was nominated for an Emmy? What the fuck is wrong with entertainment?
Anybody can win an Emmy these days.
Oh my
God. They're just Emmys, man. They're just Emmys.
They just give them away like candy. In his animated Emmy-nominated episode Pickle Rick, he is asked by the therapist why he doesn't want to be there. Because I don't respect therapy, he says. Because I'm a scientist. Because I invent, transform, create, and destroy for a living. And when I don't like something about the world, I change it. All things that move between the quiet poles, declares Christopher Marlowe's Faustus, shall be at my command. Quavering, the dithering Morty, with his vestigial concern for other beings and his pangs of this and that, is Rick's split-off other half. A dialectic of damaged maleness, you might call the pair. Together they form one futuristically fucked up man. Both characters, incidentally, are voiced by the same person, Roiland, the show's other co-creator. So, in this massively popular cartoon show, along with all the snorts that we have howling despair, a kind of sorceress materialism, and the American male psyche cracked right down the middle. Harmon, Roiland, and their team are very good writers, and with very good writers, many things are possible. Perhaps the next 70 episodes, holy shit, of Rick and Morty will be soaring works of the spirit, enlarged by compassion or conversion. For now, though, here's the health warning. Watch your intake, young person, of this hilarious toxicity. Be not the sport of psychedelic locusts.
That was an article from the Atlantic, by the way. That was not written by a honey badger.
Yeah, that was not a write-up. That was actually me quoting the article from the Atlantic that was essentially saying that, I guess, Rick and Morty is toxic masculinity.
It could be anyone, really. It's they're saying Rick and Morty's a good show, but it's got too many fans now, so it's not cool in my eyes. I mean, it happens all the time. You got about 2 years of popularity before the woke hipsters don't like you anymore.
Brian, don't bother trying to comprehend it. All of us together, we don't even have the combined IQ to comprehend.
To be fair, think of the IQ you have to diss Rick and Morty. I mean, just galaxy brain.
Yeah,
well, it's definitely not that this person is overanalyzing the show and the characters and the meaning and the relationship to the fans and the writer and all that. It has no bearing whatsoever on this article. There's no overanalysis, and there's definitely no over application of significance or overstating of impact on society or anything like that going on in this article. It's totally 100% intellectually sound and completely reasonable for an individual writing for a respectable, illustrious publication like The Atlantic to just go batshit crazy with upset over a cartoon. It's completely reasonable. There's nothing wrong with this. This person should not be criticized. because obviously, obviously, this is the only influence in the lives of these poor, young, impressionable minds that watch this cartoon, and they can't possibly at all enjoy it because, you know, the humor in it maybe is reminiscent of other experiences that they've found funny, or because it's shocking, or because it's weird, or because it's creative and well done. No, it's definitely because they're being taught how to live by one cartoon on a network full of cartoons. That's gotta be it. That's totally the problem.
That's
right
gotta
there.
be, absolutely. And don't think too much about the fact that the guy who created the show, Dan Harmon, is himself a male feminist, and that he went on I think it was a maybe slightly inebriated rant about how 30% of people in the United States are Nazis, and that we should just, I guess, eliminate them. And
if I could make one short correction, I could at best call him the co-creator. Justin Roiland very much created the characters, their look, and their voices, and Dan Harmon sort of saw it and came up. Well, I think they've been friends for many years, actually. But Dan Harmon's kind of, I think he's just the sounding board or whatever, or the producer. He's the dick. He's the guy who goes out there and is a dick at everyone.
Oh, okay. All right. So he may not be the creative force behind it, but he was involved with the project.
I would imagine so. I mean, Community was pretty good, and he wrote that, right?
I did like Community. It's actually really upsetting that that's the guy who was calling everybody Nazis. 30% of the country.
Maybe he was just trolling for shits and giggles, or maybe he is a little bit. Maybe he's got a screw loose. I mean,
have you seen that? Like, he's definitely got a screw loose.
Yeah, I've seen that rant. Yeah.
At one point, he's just frothing at the mouth, and his jelly rolls are just going all over the place, and he's swinging his arms back and forth.
Yeah, he likes being a cartoon. I think a lot of us do. So to some degree, maybe he's putting it on, but to some degree, maybe he's not. I mean, he's following it through. He's not dropping character. If this is just a character who thinks 30% of the country is Nazis.
Being charitable, Mike.
Yeah, he's a little bit comparable to Alex Jones when you look at it that way.
How dare you, sir?
I think. Well, I mean, I get it. I don't know. It's just Dan Harmon needs help. That's all I'm gonna say. I hope he doesn't go into a bathroom, leave the janitor $100, and shoots himself, because he'd make a mess, and it's a lot to clean up. Not because I don't want
need a hell of a lot more than one bullet.
Yeah.
But by the way, that sketch about fucking babies was spot on. Okay, laugh out.
Okay,
there was a satire on the show Dexter. You see, I get the joke. So you get to keep your job, Dan. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. So let me see if I got some super chats, and then we'll get out of here. It is 6:33, and I'm doing well on time. So Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, Rick and Morty is much of a smart show, as Chrissy Winters says that she is an official doctor. Is as much of a smart show is what I think you meant to say. Okay, I haven't seen much of it, so I don't really have like a strong opinion on Rick and Morty. I was hoping that it would be on Netflix, because I don't have cable. You know, I just have like Amazon Prime, and it's just sort of a side effect of getting Amazon Prime for the delivery stuff. It's not even really for the TV. I canceled my Netflix because fuck that shit. I did get to catch a little of it because when I was in Australia hanging out with Bering and Sugar Tits, I watched some episodes with Sugar Tits, and that was the first time I'd ever seen it. So I don't have like a strong opinion on the show itself. I will just go along with what you're saying, Tyler. Field of Bears gives us $10.
I've been watching it since like a quarter of the way through the first season. I'm an original woke hipster. I was into it before the masses were into it. That's why I feel like defending it, but at the same time, I do kind of have that condition of, everyone likes it now. It doesn't feel like my thing anymore. But I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna get salty and, shall we say, envious about it, because I fucking love the show.
I was like that. I was like that with Venture Brothers. And and Robot Chicken when like nobody knew about it, you know. I was like that with those shows.
I don't think Venture Brothers ever got to that same point, though.
I don't think Venture Brothers is as... I think it's still less popular than I think it should be, but I'm okay with that.
That's good.
It's like Axe Cop. Axe Cop is another one that I really like, and I'm glad that, you know, there aren't a whole lot of people that watch it.
The normies must never find out about these things.
No. Hopefully they'll never get it. Okay, well, anyway... also, I bet that the reason for the Rick and Morty popularity getting into the mainstream might have something to do with that special Simpsons intro they did, where they had Rick and Morty actually kill the Simpsons, and it was like the couch gag, but it was like extra long. Could have been that, but that's just a theory I just threw out there.
Look, the concept of the show is they travel not just through time, but to alternate dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
It's got infinite like potential as a show. It's already good on paper. All you have to see is one episode before you go, oh, all right. You can do it literally anything with these plots, right? Yeah, because it's animated. We can get like teams of little Korean dudes to just draw this all for us.
Yep.
That'll be dead easy.
They animate The Simpsons. And probably Rick and Morty, too. Okay, so... Field of Bears gives us $10 and says, when Rick is wrong, the audience gets to feel morally superior because Rick is a terrible person. When Rick is right, the audience gets to just laugh it off because Rick is a terrible person. It's almost like it's acknowledged.
It's a lot like House. People love House even though they know he's a dick.
Yeah.
It makes for an interesting main character that you can get more than 6 or 7 episodes out of. You know?
Mm-hmm. Although I'm pretty sure that Hugh Laurie is probably a pretty nice guy. If you get along with Stephen Fry, you know, you're probably okay. But I don't know. Okay, so we're going to go ahead.
Who doesn't get along with Stephen Fry? How can you not love that huggable...
Michelle Goldberg and Michael Eric Dyson, I imagine, don't get along with Stephen Fry. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get out of here. And yes, I think I agree. Venture Brothers is true culture. Don't share it with too many people, but definitely share it. So we're going to go ahead and do this in the after show. It's a bit of a interesting story that Mike J sent my way about The Verge and how they took down their gaming PC video, which basically is a guy putting a video together, complaining about racist attacks on the host because he didn't build the computer correctly or something. I don't really know much about computers, but I did watch the video. And I got so bored. But we'll look at the story in the after show. If you want to join us in the after show, you have to become a patron at www.patreon.com/HoneyBadgerRadio. And one level of patronage will let you watch. Another one will let you join in as a participant, and you can partake in the discussion. I want to thank Mike J, Dr. Randomcam, and Hannah for coming on this week's HBR News Show. And especially want to thank you guys for joining in the discussion, because without you, we'd be yelling into the void. So please like, subscribe, and comment especially. I'd like to hear your thoughts. And, yeah, love you guys very much. We'll see you guys very, very soon. Oh, and one other thing. Bert and Ernie, they're not gay. They don't have a sexuality. They're fucking Muppets. They exist to entertain and educate children, you sick bastards.